Today I'm going to show you how to calculate the speed of your dirt bike. Let's get an overview of how the motor works before we calculate the speed. The combustion chamber rotates the crank, which rotates this crankshaft gear, which ends up rotating the clutch, which rotates the main shaft, and depending on the transmission ends up rotating the drive shaft, which rotates the rear tire. The number of teeth on a gear is used to calculate how many rotations it takes to move for this gear to move this gear one revolution. Since this is a smaller gear, it takes more revolutions of this gear to turn this gear one revolution. The output of the crank is stated in revolutions per minute, or RPM. So we'll calculate for 5,000 RPM. So 5,000 RPM means every minute this front gear moves 5,000 revolutions. And when we use that to calculate how fast this turns every minute, which is going to be much slower since this is a much bigger gear. First, let's calculate the primary drive ratio. The number of teeth on the crankshaft is 25 and the number of teeth on the clutch is 63. If we divide 63 by 25, we get 2.52 primary drive ratio. Next, for any given RPM, we can calculate how fast the main shaft turns. This would be RPM divided by primary drive ratio. The RPM we said we were going to use in this case was 5,000. So 5,000 divided by 2.52 is 1984. So 1,984 revolutions per minute of the main shaft. The second step is to calculate the gear ratio. This is done by taking the number of teeth on the drive shaft and dividing it by the number of teeth on the main shaft. This is the number of revolutions the main shaft has to rotate to turn the drive shaft one revolution. The higher this ratio, the slower, and the lower the ratio, the faster the gear. So let's calculate this for the CR500. There are 28 teeth on the drive shaft of first gear and 16 teeth on the main shaft of first gear. This gives you a ratio of 1.75. This is a very slow gear. Second gear is 1.39. Third gear is 1.15. Fourth gear is 1.04. Fifth gear is 0.79. So we can calculate the drive shaft revolutions by taking the main shaft revolutions divided by the gear ratio. So we had calculated first gear to have 1.75 gear ratio, and previously we calculated the main shaft is moving at 1,984 revolutions per minute of the main shaft at 5,000 RPM. So this is 1,134 revolutions of the drive shaft. And we can see that second gear has 1,427 revolutions, third gear has 1,725 revolutions, fourth gear has 1,907 revolutions, and fifth gear has 2,511 revolutions per minute. Step 3 is to calculate the final drive ratio. This is done by taking the front sprocket and rear sprocket teeth. So on the CR500, the rear sprocket is 51 teeth and the front sprocket is 15 teeth. 51 divided by 15 is 3.4 final drive ratio. We can calculate how fast the rear moves by taking the drive shaft revolutions divided by the final drive ratio. First gear at 5,000 RPM is 334, second is 419, third is 507, fourth is 560, and fifth is 739. This is how fast the rear wheel moves every minute. Step 4 is to calculate the distance of the tire. This is 2 times the radius of the tire times pi. This will give you the circumference of the tire, which is the distance the tire will move in a single revolution. So roughly the diameter is 26.5 inches. 26.5 times pi is 83.21 inches. So now we can calculate how fast you move per minute. And we can do this by taking the rear wheel revolutions that we've calculated for first through fifth, multiplying by the tire distance, which is 83 inches. First gear moves 27.8 thousand inches per minute, and fifth gear moves 61.5 thousand inches per minute. There are many factors that can have you not achieve these maximum calculations, such as clutch slippage or rear wheel just spinning, etc. But these are just estimates, and I've also removed all fractions during these calculations. So we have 12 inches per foot, and we have 5,280 feet per mile and 60 minutes in an hour. So we can take, for example, 27.8 thousand inches divided by 12 multiplied by 5,280 feet, and we get the number of miles per minute. So we multiply that by 60, and we get 26 miles per hour for first gear, 33 miles per hour for second gear, 40 miles per hour for third gear, 44 miles per hour for fourth gear, and 58 miles per hour for fifth gear. Remember, this is only at 5,000 RPM. To calculate the maximum speed, we'll have to calculate what the maximum RPM we'll be running at is, which could be 7,000 to 8,000 RPM. So a final overview is RPM divided by primary drive ratio is MainShaft revolutions per minute. MainShaft revolutions per minute divided by gear ratio is the drive shaft revolutions per minute. Drive shaft revolutions per minute divided by final drive ratio is rear wheel revolutions per minute. Rear wheel revolutions per minute multiplied by the distance the rear wheel moves in one revolution multiplied by 60 is distance per hour in the units that you have calculated your tire distance in.